just got three things to say. God bless our troops, God bless America, and gentlemen, start your engine!
Got it.
Live streamed.
Here we are
At the intersection of
motor and state. Minus our zippy.
Okay. You're being live streamed.
We're being live streamed
Got it.
at the intersection.
Yep.
All right, and now I have a singular window up, so we won't be talking over ourselves. How are you guys doing today? On this 22nd of May, circa 2023. Good?
The problem is we tried to set it up
Good.
too early.
Greetings programs. Yes. Again.
And then, Ed, you have something to usually say.
I said hi, bots.
There you go. Hello, everybody. So it has been an eventful week in the world of motorsports and politics, which I was saying it never seems to be a boring week in politics.
Well,
Sadly.
It depends on what.
We should do a good news. We should do a good news version. Like maybe like 1 out of every 10. We just force ourselves into good news. What's happening in the world that's super cool.
Oh, well, here's some good news.
Yeah, I
We
want
just
to
have a good news corner.
The majority of time on Earth, nothing's happening. In most places, for most of the time, nothing's happening.
That's true. That's true.
It's a pretty big scale there, though, that we're considering.
Yeah.
I remember when, for a moment, like after a certain person got elected, I was like, I'm fine. Like, it's gonna be okay. There's not gonna be like a pandemic or anything that needs to be managed.
How bad could it get?
What could it get? I don't know. I'll feel okay.
Well, read your history to see how bad it can get.
There you go.
Again, is that maybe that's not boring, but it's not surprising. It's not,
Well,
Correct.
As the Stoics would say, right? We were talking a little bit before we got started, Brian, before you came in, that talking about the Stoics that we read occasionally and share with each other occasionally, and they're just saying there's nothing new under the sun. Doesn't mean we want to repeat things that have already happened under the sun. Not all of them. So,
Yeah.
Right. Like we would want to prevent some of those things.
you would think you could learn from some things. Well, anyway, so we're jumping ahead. First, we're going to get into some of the motorsports that went on this week. I thought maybe we would start with IndyCar because, holy crow, it's still going on. Today, we'll talk about that too. Some unfortunate news happened today, but man, watching Indy qualifying was dramatic. And on both sides, incredible elation. It was all the things that motorsports offer, honestly. I
Truly.
thought, it was like the incredible elation of taking pole at the greatest spectacle, right, in motor racing. And then they had more cars trying to qualify than could qualify. So they actually had a bump day for the first time in quite a while. And the way it played out was wild. And by the smallest of margins on either end, the driver that was excluded and the driver that took the pole, that's 33 cars different. The margins were just absolutely tiny. So Palou took the pole, right, by like 0.009 miles per hour over the span of 10 miles, 4 laps. I don't think I've ever seen anything that close. Have you, Brian?
It's the closest front row in Indy history, yeah.
It's crazy. And the fastest, right? Because I think...
Yes, and the fastest.
So they're averaging 234 miles an hour plus. That's the average.
over the course of 4 laps. So that's
Wow.
the way the Indy qualifies is a little bit different from every other qualifying over the course of the year in Indy and any other racing for that matter. They do 4 laps, so 10 miles, and it's the average speed over those 4 laps that determines your qualifying position. And so, yeah, these guys are barreling into turn 1 at 243, I think, or 244. And they're not braking. They just scrub speed. It's foot down all the way around. So these guys are absolutely wild. Yeah.
That's amazing.
And then,
Yeah.
like Jeremy said, over the course of 4 laps, over 10 miles, the difference between first and second was 0.009 miles per hour. Pretty wild. And then in the bump day, or the guys, so Graham Rahal, a pretty famous racing family, he's the one that got knocked out, and their team in general just came unprepared this year. They had 4 teams out of the bottom 5 that were competing for who would be able to get into the show. And so ultimately Graham Rahal got knocked out by his teammate at the last after the session had elapsed. Like, he was the last guy on track, Jack Harvey, and he had been going steadily slower in each run, and they made one small adjustment, and he went back out and he bumped Graham out of the race. And it was Graham tried to keep it together for a couple moments afterwards when they interviewed him, and he just absolutely broke down. It was quite an emotional moment for sure.
I mean, I can't imagine being the dad, if you're fielding. So they're fielding. I think they feel it's a 4-car team.
This for Indy, it's a 4-car team. Like they plus up 1 for Indy. Normally it's a 3-car team. Yeah.
So here, the dad, who is a champion himself, is an ownership team, and also it's Rahal Letterman, right? It's
Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing. Yep. So Dave Letterman is a co-owner. Mm-hmm.
As well. And so Bobby is there, former champ, father of one of the drivers on his team. And that is the driver that happens to get bumped out of the biggest race of the year. And I don't know. I don't know. As a dad, that would just be wild. I don't know if he was just kind of sitting back and not like forcing anything to happen, but wow. Anyway, and then today, strangely enough, the driver that was the fastest on that team, Catherine Legg, who is also the fastest woman ever to qualify for the Indy 500, even though she's low on the list of, like, I think she qualified like 28th or something, but she's the fastest woman in history to qualify there at the Indy 500, and the only one that was solid in the field before the bump day.
Yep.
So they're in practice today for the race, and they stack up going into turn 1, and she rear ends Stefan Wilson. They both go spinning and into the turn 1 wall. And
she had slowed way down to 220 at that point.
Right. Wow. Yeah, she's like, I was in 4th gear. I'd already slowed down to 220, so like I was on the binders. She was trying to stop. But anyway, she ran into the rear end of this other driver, and they both went into the wall, and he broke his back.
Oh.
Yeah. So he broke his back. He's out of the race. And they don't know what's happening yet. If they have a second car, but they haven't announced if they're going to run it or if the first car will be able to be fixed, and they don't know if someone will drive it. I wonder if Graham won't end up in a seat, or if they withdraw completely, he would probably get to go in. Is that true or no?
I don't think it would be Graham. I think the team has some history with Sage Karam, who's raced at Indy many times before.
Yeah,
so he I think would be most likely, because the way that Indy works with their qualifying is that it's not the driver that qualifies, and it's the car, it's the team. So the team, I don't think would reach across over to Rahal, although maybe Rahal is doing a deal. You know, I mean, it's all sponsors, right? So Rahal sponsors might be working out, trying to put Graham in the car, but that would be a little non-traditional, a little bit controversial, perhaps, especially considering they
teammates took the guy out.
Yeah, right.
Huh,
but interesting.
But he is okay. He fractured his a vertebrae, and I guess he's okay. He just can't race.
It took a long time for them to get him out of the car, and we did get to see him put his thumb up as they were putting on the stretcher into the ambulance, and they took him outside the track to the local hospital. So he's communicative. He's talking. He knows what's going on. But yeah, I mean, you break your back. You break. I think it's the 12th vertebrae. So
you're hurt. But it's the first accident actually the entire time that they've had. So it was the first one they've had, and unfortunately, they have an injury. Racing, you forget. You know often, right? It's like you forget until something goes sideways.
Indy is no joke.
Yeah, Indy's no joke. There's a lot of drivers that say they will never drive there because it's just it's too much. It's too crazy. So these guys and gals are putting it on the line out there, and we'll see that next week. Do you have, we haven't really done too much of. What do you think now, real quick, before we go on to the All-Star race or what have you?
Just real quick on the Indy, the list of 73 fatalities at Indy since its advent in 1909 or 1911. I can't remember if it's 1909 or 1911 at the moment, but yeah.
It's the 107th running, but that doesn't mean it was 107 years. They might have had a miss.
Yeah, they've missed a couple, especially during the war, of course, in the 40s. But yeah.
So
sorry.
No, it's okay. No, that's good. That's cool. That's interesting information, and it also puts it into perspective, right?
Yeah.
What's the quote? What is it? A Norman Mailer quote? Like boxing and race car driving are the only sports. The rest of the
I think it's Hemingway, actually, if I remember right.
Okay.
What's the quote?
There's only 3 sports left. I think it's bullfighting, auto racing, and boxing. Maybe I think is the. I'll look it up.
It just says the rest are games.
That's it.
Okay. There you go.
Only 3 sports: bullfighting, motor racing, and he said mountaineering. Apparently.
Really?
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either. Is that so? That's interesting.
I think it just had a Mandela effect. Yeah, I don't remember it being mountaineering. I could have sworn it was boxing. But the concept basically is, the 3 things that people can get hurt, like seriously hurt. Because back then, when he said it, people were dying and racing all the time. Anyway, moving on from that lovely, happy note.
It fits the mood today for some reason. So just a little
predictions.
Bit. So Penske's struggling a little bit. Andretti is like nowhere. McLaren is crushing it. AJ Foyt Racing is killing it.
Ganassi is crushing it too, along with McLaren.
All 4 of their cars in the top 12. So here's my question for you, Brian, and then we'll move on to the next one. Give me just a prediction, what you think as far as the 500, and I'll go ahead and give me mine, and then we'll move on to Wilkesboro.
Okay. So final practice, Penske was looking a little bit better, but again, I think what they're aiming for is the cars to be good in traffic a little bit more than just all outright speed. So I think Penske will be in the equation, but I don't know if they'll be in there for the win. I don't know. I'm gonna throw Dixon out there. Ganassi's always strong. Dixon's won there before, but it's been a while. And last year he lost he lost the championship because he went 1 mile an hour, 1 mile an hour over the pit lane speed limit. He lost the race and he lost the championship because of that one mistake. So I'm gonna go with Dixon this year.
Going with Dixie. All right. I see McLaren with 4 cars up there as well. And you know what? I have a little sentimental favorite. I think it would be neat to see Kanan win.
That would be beautiful.
I'd like to see the old man win in his last one. My little boy wants Rossi. And then, Award is looking good. I mean, I think he's going to be extremely strong. But I'm going to put my heart out there, not my mind. I'll put my heart and say, I'm going to root for Kanan, and Ethy will be rooting for Rossi, and we'll see what happens. I would also love to see Ferrucci though do really, really well. He's started like 15th is the best start he's ever had, and he's always finished in the top. I think it's like the top 8. He's like incredible at Indy, so it would be so cool to see him win. Anyway, I'm gonna pick Kanan.
I have mixed emotions on that guy, but
because of what he did.
Hopefully he's grown up a bit and his outlook on life has changed a little bit, because not somebody I would have hung out with as of a couple of years ago at the very least.
This is true. I just like his hair.
But he is exciting at Indy. He's always done well there. Yes, you're right.
Okay, so that's good. So Sue wrote down, you got Dixon. I got Kanan. Ethan has Rossi, who he's rooting for. Ed, you want to throw a dart at the dartboard? I don't know. I mean, there's so many names out there.
What if I just pull a number?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
All right.
We'll get the closest.
So is there a 42?
I think there might be.
There's a 44, which is Catherine Legg, actually.
Is there a 34?
Hold on, I'm gonna have to look at the field. Because there's some non-standard numbers in the field, because normally the series has about 24 cars, and at Indy they have 33. So,
is there a 7?
There is a 7, that's for sure. Yes, that's
okay.
Rossi.
Who?
That's Rossi. Yep.
Rossi.
Get on board. There you go. All right.
That's a good one.
There you go. That's off the label of the eyeballs that I got. Somebody sent me some eyeballs. So that's off the label for the eyeballs.
All right. Cool. All right. Well, that wraps up Indy. Also, NASCAR was in North Wilkesboro this week for the first time since 1996, and they had a whole weekend of racing. Last week we were talking about Rodney Sandstorm racing late models there, and he did that, and he qualified 28th, finished 20th, and was super positive on his Discord and on his postings. I think he had a blast running out there. They had something like 50 cars, so he was that's pretty wild, and he ended up 20th. So not too bad for your first time ever just turning left 100 million times in a row, which is harder than some might think. So he did not go out and dominate, but he ended up 20th, and it had a lot of fun. And then they had a few other late model. They had like 3 late model races, I think. And then they had a truck race. Larson wins in the trucks. Bubba, my man, comes in 5th. Not too bad. Top Toyota. And he actually, the last restart started 2nd, but on the outside, and that's very, very difficult at that track. He ended up, he was on old tires. So he ended up fading back to 5th, but that's a pretty darn good run for him. In the trucks, the last 2 weeks, he's been 7th and 5th. So, anyway. But Larson is the guy who's tearing it up for real, and basically winning in every single thing he sits down in. And I'm not like 100. I have some mixed feelings about him, but not really even. He's just killing it. He's a freak. I think he's one of those guys like Brian, like you're around them when they race and they do things that you go, I just don't know
how you do it. Yeah.
And I think that's him. I think that's him in NASCAR. I think that's him wherever he goes. people are just going like, I have no idea how he does that. He shows up at tracks he's never been at, in cars he's never been in, and beats everybody that's been there all year. It's he's freakishly good.
Did you watch that clip that I sent you, the fast forwarded
Yes,
clip of him moving from the back? Yeah, unbelievable.
Well, I mean, yeah, he just especially there's that one lap where he took like, I don't know, 8 cars on the outside, which was when they all stacked up, and he just went around the outside and got like, I swear, like 8 cars at once. It was amazing.
There's this clip that I sent Jeremy Ed of him driving for all the way from the very back of the pack all the way to the front. It's been sped up, so it's like a 3-minute video, but it shows him passing every single guy from the back all the way to the front in one go. No cautions, no stoppages, just absolutely murders it all the way from. It's crazy. He just picks him up, puts him down, picks him up, puts him down, and he's just doing stuff out there that no one else is doing. It's
when you say, can you give me an example of doing something that no one else is doing? Because to the layman, it looks like that's a car, and that's a car,
they're all doing the
and
same
they're both
thing.
going around in a circle.
In NASCAR, it's these guys can stand on an egg without breaking it, with how sensitive their feet are and how well they have to be able to get back into the gas at the exact right time. I mean, when you're qualifying from first to last is all within like 1 second of each other, over the course of one lap. The guy in first and the guy in 43rd there's less than a second gap. The guy that's at the front is just doing it that much better, and to all us normal humans, you're right, it doesn't look like anything. But the guy that's in 43rd looks at the guy who's in first and he's like, how did you do that? But we're talking about like 3 or 4 blinks, and in in racing like Formula One and in IndyCar and the left and rights, we're talking about the way the driver is able to feel the car in his butt and know what the car is doing at any point. I mean, it's the same in NASCAR, but there's some difference there. There's a good story of a couple of different drivers, but there was one in particular where Kimi Räikkönen, who's a former Formula One driver, the most recent Ferrari champion in Formula One, and this is at Monaco, I think, in 2005 or 2006 or something like that. And he's driving, and he comes into the pits during practice, and he says, "I think that there's a crack in the chassis of the car. I think it's on the right side. There's something like I don't have the stability in the car that I'm predicting and that I want." And so they look at the car, they don't see it. They say, get back out there and deal with it. And so he goes back out there. It doesn't do as well as they should have. They take the car back to the factory afterwards. They tear it down, and lo and behold, there is a crack in the chassis, and it's in a spot that they didn't expect. But it's basically exactly where Kimi thought that it was. And it just created that little bit of imbalance in the car, that little bit of instability that made it less predictable for him to be able to get on the brakes as hard as he needs to and get back into the gas as hard as he needs to, and have that balance of the vehicle, that camber and yaw and all these different axes that the drivers are dealing with as they go around the course. Many different stories like that, but that's one in particular that's, to us, we're just like, how can you tell that difference?
Well, and I would just mention also, like in this particular race, there's a really good example, Ed, because Kyle Larson in the NASCAR, like in the trucks, they were running at Wilkesboro. They were running over a lot of there's like a concrete section very, very close to the wall. And it was like a bump and a curve and stuff. And in the trucks, because they're a lot higher and they have a lot more travel and stuff, they were all running over that spot, and they were getting good traction out of that concrete because the concrete was rougher, and they were getting more traction. They were all using it. Okay, but in the NASCAR that we're talking about now, Larson was the only one that could run that they're much more slammed down. They don't have the same kind of travel and all that. And nobody else could run there. Literally nobody else could run there. And when this thing that you sent me, Brian,
You can see it lap by lap.
yeah, he wasn't using it every lap, but when he needed to pass somebody, he would just throw it down there over that concrete and over this huge thing. I mean, he's going 100 and what's he going? I don't know. But he was the only one who could do that. And so
It's on the exit of turn 4.
Yeah. So he was talking about it after the race. He said, "Oh yeah, I could throw it in there, and then I could point and shoot and feather the throttle, and I could hit it out this way." And like everybody else is running like basically a traditional line, but he could do this thing. And he gave the team credit. He said the team gave me a car that could do that, right?
And that's the other big difference, is the drivers being able to know how to communicate with their team to set up the car in a way that's able to take advantage of those kinds of things.
I see. I got you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Bubba came second in this race, but he had nothing. He had nothing for Larson. And the day before, Bubba had beaten him on the same track in the qualifier, but the team found a way to fix the car, so that it was fast enough. The other thing that happened, which was kind of neat, was that they ran rain tires for the first time in NASCAR on a wet track at Wilkesboro, and the crazy thing was they were faster. It's just wild. They were faster in the wet with the rain tires than they were on the slicks. And today Tyler Reddick was talking about it, and he just said they just had such incredible bite. They had so much forward bite on these rain tires that they were just getting way more out of the car. That's completely backwards from what you would expect.
I'd be interested to see the longevity of the grip and of the car over an entire stint, because this race was a non-points race. It wasn't a full length race. So like seeing how long they would actually last in comparison, like how much the drop off would be.
Yeah.
Conceivably, I mean, hell, if you're doing a short stint, even if it's in the dry, put on the rain tires.
That's what he said. It was funny.
Right.
The host that I was listening to asked him, she was like, "Look, I'm going to have a blonde question." He's like, "Don't jump on me, but I'm just going to ask you, what if you put the rain tires on in the dry?" And he did not throw that out. He was like, "Well," he's like, but the thing we were saying was that in the rain tire, he could get hit very, very hard and maintain his line. Whereas in the slick, if they were running into your back end, you would get loosened up and you'd have to let them go. So that was pretty interesting. So anyway, in the end, Larson wins it. A couple of weird things happened at the race. One, somebody hacked into Bubba Wallace's radio and told him he doesn't belong in NASCAR and that he needs to go back where he came from and all this kind of thing, which is
What, you mean Alabama? Isn't he from Alabama?
He's from Alabama. Yeah. Exactly. I don't know. Anyway, so it's depressing. I mean, it's just depressing. That's a lot of effort to have to hack into that thing. And you know what I mean? That's not like something you think about doing on, Friday. You've been thinking about that for a long time, to hack into these frequencies and get onto team radios. And anyway, so they did that. And then also they went to Bubba afterwards. He gave a very nice interview, but at the beginning of it, he flicked off one of his friends off the sideway. You know how, Ed, you sent me a picture to say hello to me the other day?
Yes.
So he did that to somebody off camera, and they cut to him when that was happening.
Oh, perfect.
And so now, like, people are on the radio saying, like, we need to prosecute him for a hate crime. They're
real people. Real
Anyway.
people aren't.
Yeah, no. So
Bots are.
I don't even want to talk about it. It's so depressing. Predictions for the 600. And then let's move on. We'll go to Formula One, and then we'll have a very easy transition to our last subject. But you got any predictions there for the 600, Brian?
It's hard to go against Larson. I mean, granted, different track, different configuration, different, long race, but these dudes hitting on all cylinders. I mean, if it's not Larson, then a Hendrick guy probably, right?
Yeah, I mean, I just think I think if he doesn't have contact, if he doesn't get messed up or blow a tire, or make you know what I mean. If he runs a semi-conservative race, he's gonna walk with it. That's what I think.
Actually, you know what? I'm not going to go with Larson. I'm going to go with Bubba. He's gonna break through the barrier there, and he's gonna do it. Like he's been knocking on the door, and there's been a lot of 600s that you kind of get surprise winners in. So I'm gonna go ahead and say Bubba.
All right, that's cool. I'm my head says Larson, but of course my heart says Bubba, and he's been in the top 5. Like he's been basically in the top 5 for the last 3 races, and he's been right there. So. It'd be awesome. He flicked everybody off, and he had to listen to a racist in his ear while he was racing and all that kind of stuff. And then maybe he wins it. That would be super great.
That's true racism right there.
if he wins at Charlotte, like he should definitely do the willpower and just walk out onto the field and just double fist everybody.
The sad thing is, man, he was literally doing something funny with a friend, like off the side, and NASCAR said the same. They were like we found out he was like doing something on the side to his friend, you know what I mean, who was walking by, and it just came on, and they're like, anyway, so I don't know. I here's something I'll say interesting. I think is kind of interesting. Natasha has been part for a long time of an anti-racist group, but that they do a lot of reading and they get together and they learn an awful lot of things. And one of the things that she's talked to me about is just this idea of perfection that unfortunately in our country that that Black men especially and Black women, there's Black people in general, have to live up to. There's a standard that's much higher for them than for the white guys. It's like Dale Earnhardt Jr. did a photo shoot with a middle finger up. You got entire race teams after winning the race with their middle finger up, like taking a funny picture. You've got T-shirts being sold with, Chase Elliott with his middle finger out to whoever that was that dumped him.
I mean, how you can buy the stupid decals. You can buy the stupid decals with Calvin and Hobbes, or Calvin doing it.
Exactly, and they have them on their truck, and you know what I mean, and just all this kind of stuff, and it's just so depressing that any little thing, especially if you're a fan, you just know any little thing that he says, any little thing that he does, any decision he makes on the racetrack, all of it is just under an incredibly tight microscope, and it's too bad. So anyway, that's all.
It's nice to see when guys like that, like Bubba and Lewis Hamilton and oh boy, his name escapes me. The
Raja Karuth.
No. Sorry, the driver that won championships in IMSA in the 80s and
Willie T. Ribbs.
Willie T. Ribbs, thank you. Yeah, right. Like these guys, it's nice to see when they get to a point where they stop letting it get to them. I mean, I know it always gets to them. It always gets to them. But for them to get to a point where they realize these people aren't worth it, and for them to be able to transcend that is good to see. And I think Bubba's doing that a little bit. I see he's so much more level-headed this year. And granted, I don't watch as closely as you do, but even from a distance, I can tell that he's more settled, which is panning out to better results and a better mental sight picture for him.
Totally agree. Totally agree. And so okay, we could go into that much more, but I think we'll save it for another day.
There's one more race though to go over.
So there was supposed to be a race for Formula One in Imola.
Well, before we get there, even there's the 24 hours of Nürburgring.
Sorry, pardon me. I always forget the sports car stuff.
Yeah, I know. I'm gonna have to kick you out of here. It's
All
just
right.
gonna be me and Ed going forwards.
Yeah, Chastain.
All I remember.
Yeah. So, 24 hours of the Nürburgring was this last weekend, and the for the first time in 20 years, a non-German manufacturer took the win. Ferrari won its first race at the Nürburgring in years and years with the new 296 GT3. They beat out the Porsches and the BMWs and Mercedes and all the rest. So it's 162 laps. This was the longest race, or the fastest race. The distance record was hit this time because for the first time in years there was no rain the entirety of the race. And for anyone that's familiar with Nürburgring, it's a 15 and a half mile track through the German mountains, and it's up, down, and crazy conditions. And there can be rainstorms on one side of the track when it's completely bone dry on the other. They're going through the night. There's fog, and there's 133 cars in the field, and it's you have the fastest GT cars, the Ferraris and the Porsches and such that are doing they're doing about 200 on the straights, and you have at the same time little Fiat hatchbacks and like little Ford Fiestas and stuff like that that are racing on the same track at the same time. It's a crazy event.
Wow.
I got to go back in 2008, I think it was, or 2007. I can't remember now. Just an unbelievably wild event.
Is that the tattoo you have? Is that this?
It is. It is. That is my tattoo right there. And then I have Le Mans over here, but yeah, I think it was 2009 actually when I went, and it's a wild track to drive on, and it's a wild event to go to. There's just so many drivers and so many different stories all combining together at the same time, and such huge disparities of speed. And part of the reason why also they hit the distance record this year was because they did an experiment, and it went pretty well. No full course cautions, which you would hope you wouldn't have on a 15-mile track, but occasionally, depending on large incidents, you might still need them. But this year they only did slow zones. So if there's an incident somewhere on the track, the drivers would enter the slow zone and slow down until they were able to get past it, and then they would pick up speed again. So yeah, really cool event. Definitely recommend checking into it.
Nighttime. It was. It was the
Yeah.
nighttime. That's. I mean, if anybody listening would like to see something wild, you can look up this nighttime footage from the car. I don't know, man.
There's a specific video I would check out to give an idea of what these guys go through sometimes, and it's if you look up Rain Dance Nürburgring, you'll find it. It's like a 10-minute lap of the track, and it's in the middle of the night, and it's monsoon conditions, and they actually red flagged the race because not long after the video, because it's so crazy. And it's former Grand Am championship driver Lee Keen, and he's driving around in a Porsche 911 and just maxed out and flying past these other lower class cars like they're standing still, and you literally can't see what's going on. These guys are of a different Ed, you're talking about what separates the men from the boys. Like, what is it that you look at and you see, like, how is this guy doing this? Like, that's the kind of thing. It's absolutely wild.
Well, yeah, super cool. And that's an amazing track, and yeah, that's cool. I didn't. You sent me something about it. I was working at the time, so I couldn't tap in to see it. But it sounds like a fascinating race that I'd love to take a look at. So
Yeah.
I'll check some of that out myself.
The other cool thing about it is the coverage is just on YouTube. It's just live on YouTube. There's no paywall, no app, no nothing. It's right there.
I'm looking at it. That's crazy.
It's nuts. Well,
It's like
Yeah.
driving in Kansas.
right. Yeah. I tell you about the difference
A little
between
bit more hilly though.
What'd you say? Oh, a little
A
more.
little bit more hilly. Yeah.
I've been around. I feel like, with the difference in drivers. I mean, even in a little go-kart like what we race, a little 12 horsepower go-kart, and you're racing, and I myself, I'm a decent kart race. I'm a decent racer. I don't know how to talk about myself as a racer, but
You're good, Jeremy. You're good.
okay, I'm good. So I'm good, but I can race, and I know how to race, and I learned an awful lot about racing as I was racing. Got a lot better as I got older. But the thing is that you would race around certain people, like our instructor, one of our instructors out there, and the general manager, Mike Smith. I'll drop his name, and he'd go out there and you take a class from this guy. And the stuff that he would do with a go-kart while he's racing you is just nuts. And you're like, if I tried to do anything like that, I would just be flying out of the cart somewhere, like grinding on my helmet. And it's just one of those things. When I first started racing, I would go to the track that I would race at and be like, how in hell are these guys going 3 seconds faster than me? And then you get to the point where you're with those guys that are going 3 seconds faster. You're in that group. And then there's another level of people that come in that are going another 2 seconds quicker, right? And you're like, how the hell are you doing that? And it just kind of keeps going and going and going like that. And around people that they can just, I don't know, it's something about the way they're built. It's either something in their brain, their sensitivities, their sense of balance, their sensitivity in their entire body to how things move and change and so on, and what they can feel, and their all of these things. It's a wild sport for that reason. That I think there are people with natural abilities. Why, I don't know, but natural abilities to drive something that and that with all the work in the world, I may never ever achieve that because they just have a predisposition. Brian is at a different level than I am as far as this goes, and I don't know how our track time compares, but it's probably similar, or maybe even Brian might have less than me. I've been out at that place for 10 years where we were racing, and he's raced there, I don't know how much, but I think quite a lot less than me out there. But he's quicker than, he's quicker, generally quicker. And that's the way it goes. I don't know.
The wild thing to see is when the guys that are separate from all the rest, and like Jeremy said, when you gain speed, and then there's still those guys that are just that much more ahead of you, but there's infinite returns. Like it's just keeps getting smaller and smaller. So like at first you gain, you go out there and 3 seconds faster, and all of a sudden you're kind of in the lead group, but those guys that are at the front, they're 0.3 of a second faster, and you can't find it. You can't, whatever you do, you can't get those 0.3. It's like, I don't know what it is that you're doing. I don't know if it's your feet, or if it's your butt, or if it's your hands, or if it's your head, or if it's the way you move your body. And like, there's so many different things. And for me, it's really fun to just do laps and just try to hit the same exact lap and cut a couple hundredths of a second off every single lap. If I can just cut a couple hundredths of a second, or feel exactly where on the lap, after you do it long enough, you can know, like, oh, in that corner, I could feel that I lost 0.5 of a second. And when you do it enough, you can feel that, and being able to translate that to the actual time on the little, ticker on your steering wheel as you go past, and you're like, yep, I know exactly where that was, and now I have to fix it for the next time. It's just, for somebody that is in that brain space where you just want to constantly do better, it's a very addictive kind of experience. And there's guys that are out there that can just you don't understand what it is that they can, how it is that they're doing it. And the ones that are the most impressive are the ones that can just go out there without having been in the seat for a long time, or never having been at the track, or never having driven that kart, or being able to do it in a kart that you know is not as good as the other. It doesn't have as much power, or if it doesn't handle as well, but they can still go out there and do the same time or do better than you. And you're just like, those are the kind of folks that that are just really impressive, and they're just wired different.
Yeah.
No matter how much time you put into it.
Yeah, exactly. It's if Paul, just to genre mash, like, you know, Paul Newman, I think I might have told you this before, Ed, I don't know, but you know, Paul Newman got into racing, and the main reason he got into racing was that he had the clock never lied to him, and that every single thing he was pursuing in his life was, you know, so subjective in the arts, and so subjective in many different realms. And the one place where he wasn't going to get lied to, or he wasn't going to have, you know, a group of people look at how pretty something was, or how well it worked, and, you know, vote or give a judgment, it was that clock that would tell him whether he turned a fast lap or not. That's what he got into until he was probably almost 80 years old. I think he was racing, and that was the satisfaction of it for him. And
Wow.
you know, that's I think that's kind of like you said, Brian, it's addictive in that way, you know. So
Because there's always another tenth. There's always another little bit that you can, oh, I screwed that part up, I can do better. And then you screw up the other thing, and you have to do better in that spot instead. It never ends.
To give this example, like, okay, so Larson killed everybody, right, at the All-Star race. I mean, he crushed him. He killed him. He won by 4 seconds, and he got that 4 seconds in 100 laps. So you know, now he did come from the back, but so did Bubba. Bubba came from the back too. He was on the same strategy, but he couldn't get through the way Kyle could. But the thing is, like, if you think about that, 100 laps, 4 seconds, you know what I mean? Like, and he killed them. So it's a very, very, very tight thing that, you know.
Yeah.
So moving on.
Well, sorry, Jeremy, I keep cutting you off and keep bringing you back, but on Paul Newman, there's a fantastic documentary about Paul Newman's racing back in the 80s and the 90s. It's called Winning: The Racing Life of Paul Newman, and it looks like it's on Amazon. I think you have to pay a few bucks to rent it or buy it, but super highly regarded racer, and super recommendation for a documentary to watch on his life in racing. Very cool.
He also owned or was part owner in an IndyCar team that was extremely successful with Mario Andretti and Michael Andretti.
Right.
Mario, one champion and a kart champion. Michael being a kart champion, and also who else came over from England, Formula One?
Was it Weldon?
Nigel Mansell. No, Mansell.
Oh,
was also
yeah. Mm-hmm.
So he was always there at the track. He was a part owner in that way as well. So yeah, cool stuff about Paul Newman. My mother's favorite actor.
That's legit.
It is legit. She just, you know, she's a sucker for blue eyes. Anyway.
Yeah, understandable.
So let's get on, man. Let's talk about Formula One canceling Imola canceling at they canceled because it was flooding and killing people. They lost 9 people over there, very sadly, and many more injured. They've had extreme weather in Italy for quite some time, and yeah, it was an emergency situation. I did a little research and saw that only very, very, very few Formula One races have ever been canceled.
Yeah,
and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think this is the 6th since 1969. And but the weather was bad enough there, and the river was cresting and getting over its banks. that they had to cancel. Extreme weather is like is a huge deal right now. I think that everyone who understands anything is looking at, and as part of what we're talking about with global warming and what's happening in the Earth's atmosphere. Brian, do you have any detail about the Formula One response, or kind of what happened in the
A little bit. Yeah. So the meme worthy name of this race was the Formula One Qatar Airways Gran Premio del Made in Italy dell'Emilia Romagna 2023. That was the name of the race. This it was the longest race name of all time. Just a small amusing note there. The rain picked up throughout the week in the lead up to the race, and there's an immediately adjacent river to the track. And normally, when it does flood, it floods in certain points. But in this case, the rainfall and the I forget what the term is, not downwash, but the water flow coming from the nearby mountains elevated the water line so quickly that the river flooded everywhere. Like it raised up. It didn't go through its normal breakpoints. It flooded the entire area. And so, like you said, ended up at least 9 people died as of a couple of days ago. And on Friday, if I remember correctly, Formula One management and the FIA made the announcement that they were not going to carry through on the race due to an entertainment event and trying to add people, upwards of 200,000 people trying to get into the area. And the paddock itself was flooded, so the trailers and the trucks that were there, some of them got water damage, and of course emergency crews and response teams in Italy and in the region were completely overrun by responding to this climate emergency. So they decided to cancel the race. And like you said, very, very rare, and almost hilariously related to our discussion last week and how Formula One decided to carry through the Saudi Grand Prix last year, despite a bombing immediately adjacent to the track. And for political reasons, they decided to continue on. But in this case, they quite literally didn't have the avenues to carry that on. So it makes me wonder, in a cynical sense, like if the track wasn't actually overrun by water, but they kept going with it, is money that much of a king? Maybe not. I'd like to think that they made the right decision for the right reasons, but they don't have a super great track record of that at the moment, in my opinion. Yes, track record. Thank you, Ed.
Yeah. Well, and we were just thinking about, last week we kind of teased that maybe we would talk this week about, we were talking about sports washing last week, and then we thought maybe we'd talk about greenwashing this week, right?
Sure.
And it's, for me, it's funny. It's an interesting balance between, in my own life, right? Just to say, like, how I look at personal responsibility, moral choices around climate. I think if you're a person who's, in tune with anything, these are decisions we make every day, as to what you eat or what you are doing or what your dog is eating. Like, I think I was sharing with both of you guys, like, my dog was eating crickets because we're trying to, not have our dog have as big of a carbon paw print.
I thought that it was I thought it was very brave of you to set him out to round up the free range crickets to live on. It's a big dog,
Right. But
not free range.
right. No, exactly. It's a funny joke, but I mean, but it does. It's like there's a lot in this, and like as a race fan, as somebody who came into racing, loves racing, like how does this balance out, like with the choices I'm making personally, or even the fact that I'm sitting in a go-kart burning fossil fuels for entertainment? How do I balance that out? So maybe I don't know. Maybe I would start on a personal level. And I know you brought something to my attention with this blog that has an awesome set of things, personal things we can do in this area. Personally, I have an EV car, and I have my own little offset sheet. I'm like, okay, I'm running around in a go-kart. Here's how much it is. It gets 28 miles to the gallon when you work it out. And I'm running for X amount of time. I've actually saved 30 times that by having my EV. So I relieve my conscience in that way. I have like a balance sheet. I have solar on the house. I've got a fancy AC system and new insulation. I've spent thousands of dollars trying to work that out in my life and so on. And then I balance that against, the go-kart. But I'm open to criticism on that kind of thing. Because I don't know, it's I guess it's like I said, it's like kind of a moral judgment in a way. And then I also have and then being a fan of the racing, it's definitely carbon intensive stuff and entertainment. Almost everything that entertains us is carbon intensive, but it's certainly the running around burning fuel for our entertainment. But I did do some research on how much CO2 the world's creating every year right now, and where racing fits in that. And this is what I came up with. So Statista, I don't know how to pronounce it exactly, but a lot of these facts are from the website. It's Statista. Okay.
Stats.
It's stats. And then I also cross-referenced through Google searches to make sure these numbers were fairly correct. I called my brother to do some math. He's an engineer. I was like, buddy, can you do me some math? Because I got to do some quick math. These are a lot of zeros. So anyway, he helped me out. So thank you, Dustin. Give you a shout out on that. But so the world every year is producing around 37 billion metric tons of CO2 a year. That's a lot. 65% of that is from fossil fuel use. That's the EPA says that. 15% of that is from transportation. That were all transportation. 25% of that is electricity and heat. 24% is agriculture, which no one ever talks about, in my experience.
Yep.
And 21% is manufacturing or industry. So that's kind of the major breakdown. And I was glad to do that research because I'm learning, as I go along. But that is it, 37 billion metric tons. So when I had looked up Formula One, and they're like, oh, Formula One is 256,000 tons of CO2 a year. I was like, Jesus, that's a freaking ton of CO2. Like, that's crazy. And like 75% of that or close to that is from transportation. It doesn't even have anything to do with the cars. The cars don't do hardly anything. It's like 1% of it is the cars.
Yeah, I think it's even less. I think it's like 0.6 or something insane. Yeah,
exactly. It's like it's nothing but the main thing is flying it all around and shipping it all around and doing all this. Anyway, because they go all over the world and they don't do it in an efficient way. So I was like, oh, wow. Okay. So 256,000 tons. I thought that was huge. But then I divided that into what we're doing in the world. And I'll give you the actual number. So it's out of the 15% that's transportation, it's 0.005%. So it's 0.005 of a percent of what the world's doing. So I don't think that doesn't make it, I don't know. it's just, I don't know, what does that make you think? Like with those numbers, how does
Watching
that-
Jeremy like do mental gymnastics in front of us is very interesting.
Well, I know, but it's a complex thing. It's I think it's a complex thing because motorsports has given us an awful lot of things. It's brought efficiencies, it's brought safety, it's brought innovation, it's brought a lot of things that have actually benefited us in the area of transportation. It is a giant amount of CO2 that they're doing. They can certainly improve that. But my question, and an honest question I would love for us to discuss is, at that, like, what is the benefit? Let's say you're at 0.005% of the output of CO2, and that's for entertainment. And what if they do start cramming and fixing and pushing down on their CO2 output? Is there a value in that, in helping the world come on board to that type of effort? Because the world is the problem. Formula One could run for the rest of all eternity and not do anything to the planet. It's the overall thing. So I'm just wondering, is it a way to help people understand what they need to do in their own situations? I don't know. Please talk.
I have a thought.
I would love to hear it.
So if tomorrow a competing organization was revealed, it's NASCAR, only it's completely solar driven, solar powered vehicles.
Yeah.
And so now you have teams that are pushing these cars, pushing the technology. How do you get those? So I didn't say it during the conversation, but I always heard Eric Johnson could tell the difference between a Duracell and a Rayovac battery in his delay pedal, stuff like that. All right. So these guys are going to be doing that with real electric cars, not the, sort of experimental stuff that we're dealing with. They're pushing these cars. All right. Well, you're up against cars that can go, 260 miles an hour we were talking about? All right. How do you get a solar car to go 260 miles an hour and take a hit and and the aggression that the Americans require and all that? Okay. Well, that's the technology. That's what they're doing with tires. That's what they're doing with carburetors. Yeah. Mule.
Started with a mule.
Mixtures, all that stuff. The technology. All right. Only it's all solar. So we know that war and commerce are what drive innovation. So if that were to be revealed, there'd be a whole group of people who would say, oh, it's not just cars burning up a bunch of gas just to burn up gas. It's solar. These are solar cars. And you would tap into a whole different market of people who are interested in what can you do with a solar car, right? So
We have a version of that kind of going on.
Okay.
Version,
Yes.
going
But-
on right now. I can't watch it, and I honestly have a question. I would really love to watch it, and I can't freaking watch it. I don't
Well,
even know how to watch it. And I'm
sure.
a race fan that watch the Formula E, and maybe I'm just ignorant. I can't find it.
So put it
Keep
this
going,
way.
Ed.
If you decide, okay, the cars themselves, what it's doing actually is too small to really show up. But then you ask culturally, what does NASCAR tell us about Americans, about what it's okay to do, about what do we need to
It's the
worry
messaging.
about? Yeah. What like, oh, there's a climate crisis. Tell you what we're going to do every night. It's just in the annals of time, it doesn't look good.
Yeah, there's some associated messaging with it. So I got a couple things to get into. The interesting looking at the numbers. So Jeremy was mentioning, last year we blew 37 billion tons of carbon into the atmosphere. In 1950, 1950. This is after World War II. 1950, we did 6. And you look at the graph, and it is truly exponential. Back in 18 or 1900, it looks like it was something like 3. So it's very, very in keeping with our population spike. So it's very difficult. Not that we're even discussing the so-called controversy behind it, but you can't. It's incontrovertible. When you look at the options that we have for trying to maintain that level of excitement with what renewables can provide in a motorsport application, you're very quickly confronted with the efficiency of energy of petrol, because while the sun creates energy, we need to store it in some kind of way, and electricity in general is very difficult to put that power into wheels in a contained sense, like a vehicle. So unfortunately, because of the size and the weight that's associated with a person and the safety features required, and anything longer than a couple minutes at a time, the battery technology that we have only allows for this much good racing at any kind of speed that is interesting to people that want to watch. Where you can see a little bit of that's actually really fun, if you look at drone racing, is actually very fun and interesting. I don't know if you guys have ever seen this before, but there are a couple of drone racing series where these are the drone is only like yay big, but it's flying around at 60 miles an hour or something, and the guys that are flying them have the VR goggles and whatnot, and they're flying them, and they're having to go through obstacle courses and all kinds of fun stuff. That's a fun and interesting kind of racing that can utilize electricity and renewable energy in a way that is kind of holistic, and it's like, I only need this much power though. That's the big difference. And what Formula One is not really reporting, I think, when it comes to their actual output, and this ties in with what Ed is saying, they're reporting on what goes into, their output of carbon emissions is it comes from logistics, comes from the cars, comes from the resources needed, the carbon, because everything that they make in the car is made out of carbon. There's a huge heat block, all these different aspects. Pardon me. What I am almost positive that they're not reporting is the carbon footprint of all of the audience that comes into the racing. And you have all of these events worldwide, 23 this season, I think, or 22 now with the cancellation, races that have hundreds of thousands of people attend. And what footprint are they creating as they fly to the track, and as they produce waste, and as they use utilities at the tracks, and all of this? I don't know to what extent Formula One, I don't think that they are including that in their overall cost, so to speak. I might be wrong.
I want to mention just one thing about maybe it might be interesting to you. I was once when I was part of Sacred Fools Theater, and I was on the artistic committee there. We were approached by people that were working to make what we were doing in the theater more green and more sensitive to energy use, and so on. And I was expecting most of that to have to do with the lighting we were, using, or I don't know where we had our thermostat set, or these types of things. It might be just a little bit of a mitigating piece of information. the number one thing that the organization told us that we could do to make our theater green was to sell all of our tickets. And the reason was, now, not with air travel. I think air travel would have to be outside of this because air travel is such a huge thing. But as far as in Los Angeles, if we could get people out of their cars and sitting in our theater for 4 hours, that was a net positive. It was so they were
Wow.
like the best thing you can do for the environment is make great theater and sell lots of tickets. So
Wow.
it wasn't just about like, hey, have your your recycling thing and have your data, but there was a like a net effect of having people not be in their vehicles for those 4 hours or whatever they have, even though they have to drive there and then drive home. The idea that they weren't idling on the road or traveling on the road or something. There was actually
Doing other things. See,
yeah, it was interesting.
there's a certain capitalist assumption in that in so many different consulting firms that are involved in sustainability efforts are going with that assumption of well, if they're not doing, if there's not butts in seats, they're going off and spending carbon in some other kind of way, and that's true, but it's also it's a preconceived notion that, like, if dollar one isn't being spent in this place, it's being spent in this place, and this place, and this place, and we always assume that there's never any discussion of reduction, which, Ed, I know you've brought up before, and that's, I think this is just a universal truth, unfortunately, with our species, with our life, with our universe, that you can't, Pandora's box is open, and you can't tell people to go sit and not spend, whether it be their money or their energy or their carbon or what have you. The carbon footprint, I want to make super abundantly clear too, is it's a dirty word, really. It's a dirty concept, because before 2005, we did not have the concept of a personal carbon footprint. That is, this was a case where BP, British Petroleum, went out to a consulting advertising agency called, what's the name of it? Ogilvy and Mather. And they came up with that term of a personal carbon footprint, and that enabled BP to put the blame, so to speak, on the consumer, as opposed to the industrial giant that is, the father and mother of all things carbon. And they put out a calculator on their website where you can plug in how many flights you do per year and how much food you eat and blah, blah, blah. So you can see and, take on the responsibility as a responsible consumer, as a responsible citizen of, this is how much shit that you're putting into the world. And before that, and not to say that that's not the case, like there is a certain truth to that, but for what this has really morphed into is people being, this has degraded our mental health, to be truthful. For me, it has. I think it has for Jeremy, and I'm sure for others, where we are so beset upon to constantly make every single responsible choice your whole damn life to make sure that you have the smallest impact on the world. Meanwhile, you have these monstrous industries that are, burning the planet. It ain't fair. And it's something that, while we can each provide our own little bit of help and be responsible citizens, for sure, 100%, I think there's an offshoring of responsibility that's taken place. And while we should be responsible and be thoughtful to how we consume, we are not. This is another case of the billionaire class, doing the he went that way kind of thing, and we're chasing our own tails instead of really making the systemic change that's really necessary. Because today we're talking about 0.06% of the problem,
Yeah,
and that's wild. Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
That's industry's greatest trick is it's exactly how they work the strike. The strike is you're supposed to sacrifice yourself to avoid a strike, right? Well, we don't want to go on strike because we'll lose money. And so I'll do more. I'll sacrifice because I like the people I work with. They need more from me. The people I work with who aren't making the rules, they're not making the schedules. But when your supervisor who you work with comes to you and says, hey, we need more, you're inclined to say yes because you want to do a good job, because you care about people, blah, 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 blah. But the board doesn't care about that. The board will grind you up and spit you out. It's the same move here. We're the ones eating the world, but we're going to make you feel like somehow it's your responsibility because you drive a car that for the last 100 years, this society has been telling everybody that's fine. It's no big deal. Now, all of a sudden, you shouldn't drive so much using our oil, which we're not going to do a thing about because, but if everybody sold all their stock, if everybody divested in fossil fuels, it's a sleight of hand and it's not. Yeah. If you drive a truck that gets 8 miles to the gallon, you could do better. If you buy a new car every 2 years, you could do better.
We're just little ants. We're
right.
Slightly bigger than. How much? Why are we not blaming the ants? This is.
Yeah,
we're just trying to live our lives, and if I'm Taylor Swift and I'm flying from to go see my buddy 3 times a day, and I'm using my personal jet, that's fucked up. But if I'm just Jeremy and I race a go-kart for 2 hours a month, can I not live, please? Can I not have this little bit of enjoyment in my life without having to feel guilty about it every fucking day?
Well, but feeling guilty is falling for somebody else's narrative.
Sure.
Right? There's personal responsibility.
Right.
Always, no matter what. And that is the trick comes from, I'm so busy thinking about how many bottles I can recycle that I've totally forgotten that the fossil fuel industry makes policy decisions in this country.
Yeah.
Makes regulatory decisions in this country.
Yeah. And this is where, for as much as we pretend that we are a free market and that we are not a socialist economy, like the subsidies that go into fossil fuel and into the carbon industry, like if we actually promoted a free market of energy, they would die immediately because we are not. Their profits are completely borne upon the money that the government puts into them. Like,
it's 100% true.
They can't live without our tax dollars.
Right.
And that's what's really, bearing forth their fruit and their power and their profits. Like, we don't need it. We don't, like, if we actually let renewables work on the same playing field as the carbon industry, we would be in a whole different world. But that's never been the case. It's never been the case. And not to say that renewables don't have their own dirt associated. Like, there's, the solar industry has problems. The batteries have big problems.
Sure.
And there's problems associated with the feasibility of some renewables, like using wind and solar. Like, there's you have dark times and all these different problems, but we've never looked at this in a holistic sense to try to fix these problems, because it's all been fuel all the time, and we're just forking over hand over fist with our money. with our tax dollars, with our government support on these industries that have never been clean, never professed to be clean, and have actively done the opposite, actively befuddled the truth for
Right.
us all the way back since at least the 70s, when they knew what they were doing and how this was going to turn out.
So I have a suggestion. I have a suggestion for us because very recently, one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot lately is about how, and you'll see where I'm going with this in a moment, but with how our news and our information and what's going on has become so dominated with the spasms and spastic vomiting of the right now. How no matter everything is either what they're doing or what's in reaction to what they're doing. It just seems to be like a complete wall of that. Very recently, the Biden administration proposed or put forward a new set of rules that impact everything that we're talking about. Zero coverage whatsoever on it. You can read up on it, and I've read maybe half of what I printed out on the new rules that they have put forward that have to get past, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on his name, the West Virginia senator,
Manchin.
With Manchin, who's a slave to coal, who and just the entire industries that oppose these rules, which they effectively nixed the last time they made a set of rules using the courts and and so on and so forth through the courts that they've loaded up. All right. So they spent years making these rules that they believe are going to be impervious to legal challenge, and it's freaking complex what they've done, but they're going after the largest, biggest, lowest hanging fruit in this area and they're funding, putting tons of money to help these industries comply so that they can, so it's not a quote unquote burden or something they can sue or an unfunded mandate. But anyway, it's complicated, so of course it's not going to get coverage. It's not pro-business per se, so it's not going to get coverage. It's not inflammatory and ridiculous, so it's not going to get coverage. So I think it'd be cool to look at that information and what that's happening, and maybe help ourselves and other people come online with what is actually happening in this area. Some of the things that have been proposed inside the racing thing, and I'd be curious to hear quickly, Brian and Ed, what you guys think of these things. But everyone's talking about net, what is it? Zero?
Net zero. Net zero.
Okay,
I'm so glad you're bringing this up.
NASCAR says in 2035 they'll be net zero. Formula One says they want to be net zero. Shell Oil right now is developing fuel that is carbon neutral, supposedly carbon neutral, that Formula One will be using, that IndyCar will be using, and NASCAR also is going to be using what they're calling, and I haven't researched it yet, so I don't know what that exactly means. They're going to have a synthetic fuel that is net zero, or it'll be organic. I think some of it might be coming from sugarcane. Okay, so they're moving in these directions, but they're using words like net zero. They have timelines that are to 2035. The Biden administration is working hard on this stuff and making very large investments, but it's not getting any coverage, is the thing. And it's hard to tell as a person who cares a lot about this stuff what's real, what's not, what's actually carbon neutral, what net zero means, how, you know what I mean? All of these things, it's
The obfuscation is by design, unfortunately.
Of course, right? Of course, because what do they care about? They care about their self-preservation and their business, of course.
Yeah, regardless of which business we're talking about. Yeah, right.
Right. Or whatever organization, right? The first thing that they have to do is survive. That's their first deal. So anyway, it is a huge subject, and we're just scratching the surface of it, really.
Yeah.
But I feel like, maybe it would be cool. For me, I'll go maybe research some more of that and bring some more of that to light. And then I would love to hear, Brian and Ed. We didn't get to the what is her name? I'm sorry, the blogger.
Okay, Doomer. It's the blog one of the blogs I follow. Okay, Doomer. Her name is Jessica Wildfire, and she's
got some good stuff. Yeah.
She's
She
so
wrote on
right
this.
on.
She wrote on this, and for me, she hit it right down the middle on.
Yep.
I don't want to believe that I have no impact at all, and I don't want to believe that I don't have responsibility. I want to have some responsibility,
Sure.
but also, there has to be like you said, like there has to be a correct balance between.
Well, you have to have. I mean, part of what I love about her blog is it's an honest conversation about what's right in front of us. You don't have to do too much research into recycling to realize
It's garbage.
what are we talking about when we say
Literally.
recycling. And look at all the busy around recycling. And what is it doing? Is it mostly a PR thing? Is it mostly a distraction? Is it mostly a created industry that makes a few jobs, but
Our listeners can't hear me nodding my head.
Wish.
I mean, if you look into the production chain, by the time your thing is produced, before it's even shipped and you buy it, it's already done 10 times the amount of damage. I'm being very general, but like, what makes you think it's like cars? We talk about what cars produce, and all the oil they take but to make a car, to even pull the earth together to make a car, like the cost of how we live is just astronomical.
Industrial waste is really the unsung hero of the carbon footprint. Like there's so much, like you said, Ed, that goes into production that many people don't even think about. And one of the worst and thankfully kind of highlighted ones right now is the electric car industry and what goes into creating the batteries and in our smartphones and in our electronics, like lithium and cobalt, and the way that we mine them, the way that we transport them, the way that all these different aspects that go into the production of the batteries for the cars is already so harmful. And it takes a long time, hopefully, that you might be able to earn some of that back by not creating emissions with the car. But, we don't, our biggest problem across the board is that we don't value externalities correctly. We don't value the way that we impact the environment and the world around us and the people around us in a way that actually makes sense to us in terms of dollars and cents. We don't put a price tag on all of the fish that we are killing in West Virginia as we mine for coal. We don't put a price tag on the forests that we are burning down when PDG&E or PDG or whatever the name of the company is that burn down California over and over. Like we're not taking these things into account and how it affects biodiversity and how that can, all these different waterfall and secondary and tertiary effects that take place. We don't have a way of putting a dollar sign to it. And so it's water under the bridge, so to speak. And we don't think about it. We don't know about it even. On the carbon neutral or net zero goals, long and short of it is it's a trap. It's a PR stunt as well, as far as I'm concerned, because it goes back into an offshoring of responsibility. And when you start talking about things like carbon credits, and when you start that is literally, I mean, that is the hallmark of something that's completely made up. If you're talking about credit, that means it's still getting spent just elsewhere. You didn't
Right.
do it. The other guy did. In order for you to have the nice car that you want, or the nice whatever it is that you want.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Jeremy. When I try to look up information about these supposed sustainable fuels that they're introducing in 2026 in F1, and that they're trying to use in IndyCar and NASCAR in a couple of years and whatnot, you try to do the research on it. What the heck are they? I can't, for one, I can't figure out, like, granted, I am not a scientist and I'm not smart enough on that. I'll take the hit on that for sure. But the way that it's described, like, I can't find a diagram, I can't find a picture, I can't find a video, I can't find a damn anything that's explainable in any kind of normal human terms to understand how they are producing this. And hey, by the way, what is the carbon footprint of making these fuels?
Right.
Is that, like, the fuel itself might burn clean? Sure, great. What about all of the aspects, that all of the energy that was spent to create the fuel? No idea. There is no such thing as free lunch, right?
No,
right.
So where is this going, and how is this being created? When you look at the article that you sent me, Jeremy, from Ars Technica, about when they were talking to the Formula One sustainability chief, I think her name's Ellen Jones or something like that. She was talking about some of their different efforts, and how they're trying to, so the synthetic fuels are made by capturing CO2 and combining it with hydrogen produced by the electrolysis of water. Okay. But like I said, what goes where?
There's no free lunch. I mean, I suppose you could do that with solar, you could do that with wind, but still,
Sure.
there's like you say, there's no free lunch.
How do you, what I'm trying to get at is, by zeroing out that you don't spend carbon on fuel or something like that, where does, you have to balance the books. Where is it coming out and it's 100 somewhere else? I don't know. That makes me scratch my head, because I've not been able to find, and maybe I'm just not educated enough on it, like you were saying. It makes me pause. And I was looking up a couple of articles from related climate scientists talking about the carbon net zero concept, especially for folks talking about being net zero, net zero, not actually carbon zero, but net zero. And that goes back into the carbon credit trading of things.
Double speak.
Right. It's the folks that we are offshoring our responsibility to. Again, like, China is creating all of our crap for us. Like, we're so much cleaner than China now. Of course we are, because they're making our CAC that we have, all the cheap crap that we buy. And hold on, there's one other thing that I wanted to kind of highlight there with the sustain. One of the other things that this Miss Jones mentioned was how they're zeroing out a lot of their consumption in terms of, or carbon production, by saying that a lot of the team factories are in the UK, and the UK uses renewable fuels for energy production. Actually, kinda, but they use 40% renewable fuels for their energy production. And hey, by the way, their energy output is increasing every year still. So, like,
right,
how much is, like, for you to be able to just kind of write off and be like, yeah, that's good. I think it's a lot more complex than we'd like to pretend it is.
Yes, and now the one thing I would say is that I think there is some history of having markets for, like, emissions markets. We did attack acid rain in this way, and it was you make it. I think the idea is, just to say, I think on the other side of the ledger, the idea is to make it financially beneficial for you to reduce your emissions. And that's what the market is supposed to do. So it makes it financially beneficial for you to be more efficient. And, instead of it being financially beneficial for you to just dump everything. Right. So it's supposed to flip that equation. I think that's the idea of having a carbon market.
Sure.
Is that you all of a sudden, where you might not have that incentive, financial incentive, now you do have a financial incentive to reduce your garbage, right? Because you can sell that reduction, right? And so it makes everybody come down. I think that's the theory. I don't.
Yeah.
That's and it did work, I think, with acid rain. I mean, that's how they got rid of that issue that was very problematic when I was a kid in New York State.
You look at a beautiful case study of this is the ozone layer. Like, we all decided all together at once, hydrofluorocarbons are bad, and they're creating this bad problem. And we turned it around over the course of 5 or 10 years in the early 90s.
You gave me a book, Brian. It's called it's got like 100 proposals that are in front of us. We're not talking about future stuff. We're not saying like, oh, someday fusion will happen and it's going to solve it. No, right. Stuff that we have the tech for right now that we can.
It's called Project Drawdown, and it's like a book version of the blog post from OK Doomer.
Yeah,
all the things that are just like, we can do it today. Like, and it's actually viable. It's economical. These are things that are being done in small places, but just haven't kind of holistically grown.
Yeah.
And that's again because we have a socialism of capital. Like, the status quo are subsidized, and so we don't have a true free market for as much as we pretend that we do. We're held captive by the powers that be.
Old money.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that's probably a good place to wrap up. I think, I would love to, I don't think that's horribly discouraging. I think that's actually an okay place to end with. There are a lot of places, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit that hasn't even been touched in this area. And, maybe with the increase, I don't know what has to happen. It seems like we are like I've heard a lot of people saying, well, the market is going to have to crash before we get a solution, to the debt crisis, right? Everybody has to lose money in order for there to be a solution. The solution is right in front of our face. We're going to have to all suffer before we get there. I would certainly love for us to not have to suffer when we can see the things coming before we change them. We don't seem to be there yet. So, on this one, how hard do we have to suffer before we're like, oh yeah, we can totally grow our food in this little bit different way and soak billions of tons of carbon back into the soil where it's supposed to be. But like, I don't know how, because all these solutions are here. So I'm encouraged on one hand that they're all there. I'm not, it's hard to think about what is finally going to motivate humanity to preserve itself and the beautiful earth that we all live on. I don't know. So
sadly, a person is smart, but people are stupid. So it requires a slap to the face for us to collectively get our shit in gear.
I hate to have to do it, but you have to quote Cinderella on this one, and you don't know what you got till it's gone.
It's true.
And with that,
guitar.
Exactly. All right, you guys. Hey, this has been an awesome conversation. I appreciate you both, and looking forward to next week. I hope you guys have a great week.
Oh, there's a hate crime. Hate crime is going on. Oh my God.
I love you guys.
I never.
I do declare.
Not my NASCAR.
Y'all.
Not in my NASCAR. This isn't my NASCAR.
The listeners The listeners are very confused right now.
Oh, I
Sorry,
have to-
everybody.
I have to sit down.
We're all just flipping the bird at each other.
my
and,
God.
and,
Oh,
goodness,
the-
and goodness having the vape.
I
Oh,
pulled a Bubba.
the aggression, the audacity.
The audacity.
Oh, it's just the crudeness. How dare I have never seen young men so I'm beside myself. I'm beside myself. I'm so fragile, you know.
There
so
we go,
fragile.
Ed.
There
So
it is.
there
It's
we go.
kitten.
That's all better. All better now.
Yay. Kitten makes everything
Hey,
better.
Y'all are the best. This has been Pistons and Politics Thoughts from the intersection of motor and state. Rock on, y'all. We'll see you next week. Peace.
All right. Peace.